hear a telephone conversation in which Francis Drew asks Mr. Harding about an arts club.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4.
Hello.
Hello, is that Appleton 363?
It is Harding speaking.
Oh, I'd like to speak to the secretary of the arts club.
Yes, speaking.
Oh, hello. My name is Francis Drew. I just moved to the area. My classmate and we'd be interested in joining the arts club, but we'd like some more information, really. You know, about joining and the sorts of activities you do.
Yes, well, what you want's our calendar. Ask at the library. I'll make sure that there are plenty there by Thursday. That's all right for you?
Yes, fine, thank you. But would you mind telling me how much it costs to join?
Membership fee for an adult is £2.50 per year, of course.
What exactly does club membership entitle one to?
Entitle you to? For a start, there's the club events. You get invited to them, of course. They're for members and only they are free.
What sorts of events are there?
You'll see what they are when you get hold of a calendar. But, well, there's club evening, for instance, once a month, usually Wednesdays from 8 till 10.
And whereabouts do you hold them?
Club evenings, the beach pavilion. Do you know it?
No, I don't think I do. It's not near the seafront, is it?
No, up past the tennis courts on Park Avenue. You know where that is.
No, I'm afraid I don't. We'd soon find it, though.
Quite good. I don't know what your interests are. Music. Got any musical talents?
I'm not sure about talents exactly. I like music. We both do.
Do either of you sing?
Oh, yes. We've both been in choirs.
Well, there you are then. The club's got a very fine choir. Very fine. I'm in it myself, as a matter of fact. We have practices every Friday evening. And it's no good just thinking of joining if you can't make the practices.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
What's the procedure? If we decide to join the choir or any of the other activities, how do we go about it?
You can't get into the choir without an audition. As far as the other sections are concerned, members have to apply through the section's secretary in the first place.
Yes, right. And the fee again, I've written it down somewhere.
£2.50 each.
And where do we send it? To you?
No, I'm the secretary. It's the treasurer who deals with that. I'll give you his name if you want to write it down.
Yes, please.
His name is Hosegood. Hose and then Good.
Yes.
Initial P, address 3 Clay Hill, Appleton.
Right, and it's all right to send a cheque?
That's the usual, yes. Payable to Appleton Arts Club. Appleton, Appleton. Oh, and better put your address on the back as you're new. And incidentally, there's a newsletter out 3 times a year, just to keep club members up to date with what's going on. They're sent to everyone.
That's good. Just one last thing. Would you mind telling me what the other sections are so that I can tell my classmate and we...
The players, that's our act group I've told you. Choir, you know about. There's the gramophone circle, the music workshop, the literary and discussion group. Oh, that one meets in different members' homes. Then there's the studio workshop and, what have I missed out? Oh, yes, the art talks. That's the lot, I think. The Film Society. That's the other one. Got them all.
Ah, yes, just about. Thank you very much. You've been very helpful.
Not at all. Pleased to assist. And look forward to meeting you and your classmate at the club.
Yes, thank you. Goodbye then.
That is the end of part 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear an extract from a talk about facilities for students with disabilities. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 13. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 13.
Welcome to Student Times, the programme with all the latest on what's happening at universities around the country. Today we'll be discussing disabled applicants and the kind of support they can expect to find, or not find, at the university of their choice. With me to tell us more is Student Disability Advisor Sally Taylor. Good morning, Sally.
Good morning, Hugh. I'd like to start by pointing out that although 1 in 4 people has some kind of disability, the proportion among students is much lower. This is partly because most students are under 25 and many people only develop their disabilities as they get older, but it's also because some universities don't do much to encourage access. It is true, though, that some have quite sticky problems when it comes to, for instance, wheelchair access, ancient buildings, cobbled streets built centuries ago, and so on. When faced with such a situation, some universities make an extra special effort to provide for students with particular disabilities, while others have specialist accommodation. In fact, all universities should have a written policy statement on students with disabilities, setting out what facilities they have, what their attitude is, and what they're prepared to do. But having said that, only you can properly understand the challenges of any disability you have, and so before accepting a place at a university, or even while you're considering applying, if only to raise the university's awareness, it's good to talk to them and find out how much they can and will do for you. The problem is who to talk to. Most universities and some students' unions have a disability advisor who is supposed to know what facilities they already have and will help with further arrangements if necessary or possible. However, all too often this person is a token. Sometimes it's just an extra responsibility given to a secretary. They don't know what the situation is in practice, and they don't have any real authority to change anything. So, given that for any prospective student it's best to visit a university before applying, it's an especially good idea for students with disabilities or special needs to check whether the place really does come up to scratch. In general, the university should provide personal care and assistance, and there are certain key features to look out for if you have a particular disability, including the following.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 14 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 14 to 20.
Firstly, if your mobility is impaired, check there are ramps and easy access to all buildings, not just accommodation or teaching rooms. Then, when you're inside, look for clear instructions on fire and emergency procedures for the disabled. Also, make sure there are lifts that work, not the usual ones that seem to be out of order half the time. And check for suitable lavatory facilities. There is a different set of things to look for if you suffer from any kind of hearing impairment. There should be induction loops in lecture theatres, flashing sirens in all rooms, and in accommodation, visual doorbells that light up when somebody calls round to see you. If it is your sight that is impaired, there obviously need to be braille translators of books and documents. In all buildings, the stairs, floors, doorways and windows must have clear markings, and there also have to be special fire and emergency procedures for you. If you suffer from dyslexia, you will need a computer for general use and in exams. And as exams may take you longer to complete, you should be allowed extra time in which to do so. This applies to work in general too. There are, of course, many other possible health difficulties that you may suffer from, such as diabetes, epilepsy, or heart conditions. If this is the case, check the availability of access to appropriate treatment, including medication and/or therapy. Finally, make sure that in the event of an emergency, it is clear what you and other people who may be involved have to do.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You hear a club leader giving information to a group of young people who are planning to do a 2-week holiday course at the Tamerton Centre.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hello, everyone. I've been asked to talk to you this afternoon about next month's trip to Tamerton Study Center for the 2-week course. Now, some of the things I'm going to say you may have already heard or read about, but I think it's important to emphasize a few key points. First of all, it's worth reminding you why Tamerton was set up in the first place, in the late 1960s. That was really before all the concern with preserving the environment, which everyone talks about these days. The idea was simply to get people out of the cities and into the country and to find out that just being outdoors can be very rewarding. This is not going to be a holiday in the usual sense. It's called an adventure course because you'll really be stretched to your limits, but that in itself can be a positive thing. The group I took last year, for example, said that although they actually felt pretty weak and exhausted all the time, it really made them learn a lot about themselves and increased their confidence. And in the end, that's the most important thing. Now, all of you knew about policies at Tamerton before you signed up for it, so you know that in many ways it's quite old-fashioned. You don't have a lot of choice in what you do. But something which I think makes the place so special is that you get to try so many different things every day. For instance, one day you'll do climbing, and the next you'll be surveying rock pools. It's not intended that you become an expert in any of them. It's more like a taster, which you can follow up if you want. And there isn't a lot of free time. Organized activities and talks, etc., go on until 9 p.m., and lights go out at 11 p.m. There are table tennis tables with all the equipment and board games, though I have to say the pieces often go missing, so it's a good idea to take your own. There's a DVD player with a good selection of films suitable for this age group, so don't take yours. Bedtime at 11 p.m. is strictly enforced, and there's a good reason for this. You're all under 18, and we organizers need to know that all group members are accounted for in the house as we close for the night. And of course, you'll be so exhausted anyway that you'll be too sleepy to want to cause any trouble.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Now, what should you pack? The information sheet tells you a lot about what clothing to bring. But what about other things? Well, Tamerton House has its own small shop, but anything there is several miles away, so you won't have many opportunities for buying supplies. So in this last part of my talk, I'm going to explain what objects you should take with you to the center, what you can take if you want, and also, very importantly, what you cannot take. Several of you came up to me before this talk and asked whether you can take things like kettles or hair dryers. The answer is there are plenty of these electrical appliances available in the center, and they are of the proper voltage and are checked regularly. Yours may not be, so the rules at Tamerton say you can't bring them into the center because it's considered a fire risk. Remember, it's a very old house. Now, another question was about cell phones. Although you definitely can't have them on during inside talks, you equally definitely need them when you're out on exercises. So they're a must, I'm afraid. Anybody who wishes to talk to me about borrowing a phone for the fortnight, please see me after this talk. Now, the weather's heating up at the moment, and you'll be outdoors a great deal. If you wear proper clothing, especially a hat, sun cream is optional. Also, they sell high-factor cream in the shop, so you don't have to take any of your own unless there's a special kind you use. Now, there's a special note about things like deodorants, which come in aerosol cans. I need to tell you that these are banned in the center because apparently they have the habit of setting off the fire alarms. If you want to take an aerosol can, you'll actually be at risk of being told to leave. And finally, people have been asking about whether they need to take towels. Well, the center does provide 1 towel per guest, which you're required to wash yourself. If you're happy with that, then don't bring another. If not, take one of your own. Just remember how much outdoor exercise you'll be doing and how dirty and wet you'll be getting.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You are going to hear a lecture on William Kidd. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen to the tape and answer the questions.
A Pirate Story, William Kidd. William Kidd, who was better known by the name Captain Kidd, was a 17th century British privateer and semi-legendary pirate who became celebrated in English literature as one of the most colourful outlaws of all time. Fortune seekers have hunted his buried treasure in vain through succeeding centuries. Kidd's early career is obscure. It is believed he went to sea as a youth. After 1689, he was sailing as a legitimate privateer for Great Britain against the French in the West Indies and off the coast of North America. In 1690, he was an established sea captain and shipowner in New York City, where he owned property. At various times, he was dispatched by both New York and Massachusetts to rid the coast of enemy privateers. In London in 1695, he received a royal commission to apprehend pirates who molested the ships of the East India Company in the Red Sea and in the Indian Ocean. Kidd sailed from Deptford on his ship, the Adventure Galley, on February 27, 1696, called at Plymouth, and arrived at New York City on July 4 to take on more men. Avoiding the normal pirate haunts, he arrived by February 1697 at the Comoro Islands off East Africa. It was apparently some time after his arrival there that Kidd, still without having taken a prize ship, decided to turn to piracy. In August 1697, he made an unsuccessful attack on ships sailing with mocha coffee from Yemen, but later took several small ships. His refusal 2 months later to attack a Dutch ship nearly brought his crew to mutiny, and in an angry exchange, Kidd mortally wounded his gunner, William Moore. Kidd took his most valuable prize, the Armenian ship Quedda Merchant, in January 1698, and scuttled his own unseaworthy Adventure Galley. When he reached Anguilla in the West Indies, April 1699, he learnt that he had been denounced as a pirate. He left the Quedda Merchant at the island of Hispaniola, where the ship was possibly scuttled. In any case, it disappeared with its questionable booty, and sailed in a newly purchased ship, the Antonio, to New York City, where he tried to persuade the Earl of Bellamont, then colonial governor of New York, of his innocence. Bellamont, however, sent him to England for trial, and he was found guilty, May 8th and 9th, 1701, of the murder of Moore and on 5 indictments of piracy. Important evidence concerning 2 of the piracy cases was suppressed at the trial, and some observers later questioned whether the evidence was sufficient for a guilty verdict. Kidd was hanged, and some of his treasure was recovered from Gardiner's Island off Long Island. Proceeds from his effects and goods taken from the Antonio were donated to charity. In years that followed, the name of Captain Kidd has become inseparable from the romanticized concept of the swashbuckling pirate of Western fiction. Among other stories concerning caches of treasure he supposedly buried is Edgar Allan Poe's The Gold Bug.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Wasting any time, let's start the video. So the bar chart below show the average hours of housework done by women Those are unemployed, part-time employed, and full-time employed, and full-time working men. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So what we are given the average hour spent by 3 women. Those are unemployed, no employment, and with the part-time employment and with full-time employment, and 4 are men with full-time employment, those who do some household chores work. This time spent by people on housework. Okay, so in the year 1985, 1995 and 2005, on x-axis we are given that year, and it's the time spent in hours. So 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour. So let's have a look how we will answer. And we can see that the women with no employment spend most of the time, highest time on the household works, right? The darker ones. So the rendered bar graph means the given bar graph illustrates the average time spent on household chores, household work by women at different levels of employments and men with full-time employment in the given time span. So in the given years. So it's in the given years. Okay. So overall it is noticeable from the graph that housewives spent the highest time and men spent least amount of time on housework. So we can see that housewives spent means those who have no employment, we say them housewives. So they spend the highest time, and the men spend the least time in the given years. Now explicitly, women with no employment spent 7 hours on an average in 1985. After a decade, means in 1995, the time declined slightly to 6.5 hours. The time spent declined slightly to 6.5 hours and again accounted to 7 hours in 2005. So we are talking about the women with no employment. So it was on an average 7 hours in 1985, and then after a decade, after 10 years, it reached to 6.5, and then also after a decade, it again reached to 7 hours. So the part-time working females spent just over 5 hours in 1985, which dipped means decreased to 5 hours after 10 years and surged to 6 hours on an average in 2005. Means it dipped to 5 and then it increased to 6 hours in 2005. So we are talking about females with the part-time working. So they were approximately 5.5 in the year 1985, and then it dipped to 5 hours, and then it increased again to 6 hours in the year 2005. Now in 1985, only 2 hours was spent. 2 hours were spent. Okay, hours we are writing, so it has to be were spent or spend by full-time employed women. So those who are full-time employed women, they spent only 2 hours, and after decreasing to 1.5 hours in 1995, it increased to 2.5 hours in 2005. So what happened? We can see that in 1985 it was only 2 hours, and then it decreased to 1.5, and then after it increased to 2.5 hours in the year 2005. Lastly, men with full-time jobs done the household work only for an hour. So what happened? The men did the work for 1 hour in the year 1985 and 1995. So in both the years they spent only 1 hour, and for 2005 the time spent rose by half an hour. So it from 1 hour to 1.5 hours. So the time spent rose by half an hour. So we can write that lastly, men with full-time jobs done the household work only for an hour in both years 1985 and 1995, but in 2005 the time spent rose means increased by half an hour only. So from 1 to 1.5, it increased from 1 to 1.5. So only half an hour increased after a decade, we can say. So this was for today. If you liked the video, do hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. I'll meet you in the next video. Till then, bye bye and take care.